Now let us take a look on how to solve the question number 2 in CKS Killer Shell exam simulator. Question number 2, task weight 4%. So let us now use this given context. Let's switch the context on both the terminals. So the question says Falco is installed with the default configuration on the node cluster1-node 1. Connect using SSH cluster1 node 1. So first SSH onto the given node, and then it says find a pod running image nginx which creates unwanted package management processes inside its container, and find a pod running the image httpd which modifies the etc passwd file, and then save the Falco logs for case 1, which is this one, under the given file in the format given here. No other information should be in any line. Collect the logs for at least 30 seconds. Afterwards, remove the thread, both 1 and 2, by scaling the replicas of the deployment that control the offending pods down to 0. So this question is related to Falco. And one general suggestion for your CKS exam is that it's better to solve the Falco related questions at the end. It is usually a time consuming process because there are much more steps involved, and it's easy to get lost in the logs, skimming through the Falco documentation, finding the right syntax for the log output, restarting the Falco service and waiting for the service to come up and waiting for the events to occur and being written to the logs and so on. So yeah, it's from an exam perspective, it's better to keep it at the end to save time. So follow along as we solve this question. So let's solve this section. Find a pod running the image nginx which creates unwanted package management processes inside a container. So it says Falco service is already installed. So let's verify if the Falco service is installed and running. So for which we'll use system.cut status Falco. And we see it is up and running. Good. Now let's verify the Falco config to determine where the logs are being written to. So usually the Falco specific configuration file will be sitting here. Yep. So let's open the falco.yaml file and then grep for grep insensitive, case insensitive, and then print 3 lines after that. So starting from the top, we see the syslog output is enabled, which means the logs are currently being written to the syslog. File output is false. No other file. The logs are not written to any other files. Standard output is true, and we don't really care about any of these things. So now that we know the logs are being written to the syslog, let's open the var log syslog and then grep for Falco to see if there are any Falco specific logs. Yes, we do see them. Okay, let's focus on the first part of the question. So since it says it's about image, find the pod running the image nginx, let's grep for nginx. And then let's see what's there. There are logs related to that. Clearly says error package management process launched in the container, blah, blah. and it gives the command. I think it's running the apk command, and this is the container ID, the container name, and the image, and so on. There's so much of information written related to that. Okay, so now that we know the container ID of the offending part here, let us get further details about that, right? So on this terminal, uh, let us again switch SSH onto the given cluster, and let's copy the container ID. So what I'm going to do is CRI-CTL. I'm going to invoke the crick.log CRI-CTL, which is container runtime interface cutl command. PS will display the list of running images, and now that we know the list of running containers, now that we know the container ID of the offending container, we use this command to get more details about it. So this will give us the pod ID. Now let's grab the pod ID and get more details about the pod. So we now use the pod ID instead of PS. We use pods. So this is the pod, and this is running in the team blue namespace. I'm going to open up another tab because we are running from the worker node, so which means kubectl commands will not really work in the worker nodes unless we use the right kubeconfig file. So I'm just switching here to see if I can interact with the kubectl commands with the API server. So I'm going to get pods and deployment in the team blue namespace. And we know that the offending pod is web API. Anything with the web API, yes, this is the one. So now we know the offending pod for the first case. Let's delve into the second scenario. So it says find the pod running image HTTPD which modifies the etc PSSWD. Let's now go to the first terminal. Instead of nginx, I'm going to grep for etc. Here we have. So if we read one entry, so we clearly see a file below -etc opened for writing, and it's been opened by the root user, and its login UID is given, and this is the command it used to write to the etc PSSWD file. I think it's trying to create a user called hacker by injecting this text to the file. So let's get more information. So similar to that, we have the container ID of the offending pod here. Let's do the same process which we have done before. So now that we know the container ID, let's use the crickcutl PS ID, which then give us the pod ID in which this container is running. Now we are going to get more details about this pod, and now we know this is the name of the pod. So it's rating service pod running on the team purple namespace. Let's get more information about this pod as well. So in the team purple namespace, get all the pods and deployments. So rating service, so this is offending deployment, and this is offending pod for now. So now we have figured out uh, the answers for these questions. Let's see what needs to be done next. So save the falco logs for case 1 under this file in this format. So currently for the case 1, if we go about here, so yeah, it's using a different convention, which is the logs grabbing the user details, container name, the command used, and blah blah. So that needs to be changed with the time with nanoseconds, container ID, container name, and username. So in order to change the output format, we have to update conf the config file, or where the file where the rules are located. So it's still it's a falco underscore rules dot YAML. So you see two files here, falco rules dot YAML and falco rules dot local dot YAML. Falco rules dot YAML is the file which contains all the rules, and this another file, falco underscore rules dot local dot YAML, is the file which we use for override. So another time-saving tip while solving the falco related question in the exam is to simply check if there are any rules in the override file, which is this file. If you don't see any rules, usually there won't be any. If you see, it's mostly the comments on how to use and things like that. So if you don't see any rules in the override file, simply copy the contents of the falco rules.yaml file to the falco rules.yaml .local.yaml file and modify the specific rule, because otherwise, I mean, do not waste time in copying only that specific rule to the override rule and modifying the output for that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply copy the actual rule files to the rules.local file, which is in the same location. And now any further changes that I'm doing will be on this file, right? So even before I open up this file, I need to go back to this to grab the right text which I can use to find the rule. So package management process launched in container. So I'll copy this string. Now I'll go back to the falco underscore rules.local.yaml file, and I'm going to simply search for this string there. And here we are. So we have everything there. So this is what it's already defined. So what we have to do now is I'm going to pretty much keep some of them which is already there. So we need container name and container ID and username. So username, I'm going to keep it. You don't need the login UID, so I'm simply getting rid of it. And we don't need the command as well. And we don't need the image specific information, so I'm getting rid of them all. All right. So let's So we have, so the username should be at the end. So I'm simply going to copy paste that just to make sure we don't accidentally run into any typo errors. So container ID, comma, container name, comma, username is good, is there. The other information that we need is the time with nanoseconds. And in the exam environment, you will be allowed to browse through the Falco documentation. So you don't have to launch a browser and have the link handy and so on. So in terms, if you need to refer to any of the external third-party documentation, like Falco in this case, they will be providing the link, hyperlink directly on the question, using which you can just click on that, and then which takes you to the documentation, and you can read through the documentation. So in our case, I'm going to, since the link is not in this question for the killer shell, I'm going to search Google for Falco project documentation. This is the one we're looking for. Go to the docs section. It's taking a bit longer. So the one that we're interested is about the Falco outputs. I think we can go to the references section. It's taking longer than expected. So we are looking for the supported fields section. So fields for conditions and outputs. So since the question clearly says that we have to get the time with nanoseconds in the format, I'll search for nano in this one. So here it is. So evt.time, even timestamp as time string that includes the nanosecond part. So this is exactly what we're looking for. I'll simply copy, go back to my terminal, and then I will say evt.time separated by comma, and then I'll save this change. So now we have modified the override rules for the Falco. Now let's go ahead and restart the Falco service for the changes to take effect. So for which we have to do systemctl restart falco.service. And then let's check the status of the service once again to be certain. Yes, it's restarted 6 seconds ago. Now let's take a look at the log again, which for nginx, and it looks much cleaner. So earlier it was having all this additional information like the container ID, container name, the image that is using user, blah blah. Now that we have applied this change, which should follow this naming, sorry, the output in this format, the timestamp and the with the nanoseconds, it's there. The container ID is there, the container name and the username. So it looks good. Another thing is that they have now asked us to write this bit of information to this file. Save in this file. So let us copy this, some of these logs. And then write it here. Otherwise, so what we should be doing is, so this looks so much of information. So let's just write only this bit of information and not any other thing. So let's copy this once again. We don't need any of these things. Otherwise, the best thing to do is don't write any of these things. Just write this information. Enough. Yeah, and then come back and restart the service. Now check the status. It's running. Now check the ones with nginx. Now much better. Okay. So we are interested in only in this part. So they say we have to at least capture this events for 30 seconds. So we're waiting for the time. It's approximately a minute now. Let me copy all these things and then open the file they asked us to write. It's not asking. It's still writing so much of information which we don't need anyhow. I think it's better to keep it until this one and then remove rest of them, because it's already approximately 30 seconds of 30 seconds worth of log. And from here onwards, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just for safety purpose, I'm just copying once again. We don't want to redo these things again. Can't open file for writing. Why is that? Okay, I'll write it here. Can verify this here. Good. Maybe we don't have the directory. Okay, good. Just to make sure we see the file. Yes, looks good. So we have now completed the first section of the question. Now we know the answer for the offending part. For the second question, let's find it out. We already know the first and second question. I mean, offending parts for the first and second question. Okay, now afterwards, remove the threads by scaling the replicas of the deployment that control the offending parts down to 0. So how can we do that? Is basically in the namespace. Let's focus on Team Blue for now. On the Team Blue namespace, we have to focus on this deployment. So scale this deployment, and here's the deployment name. And we have to say the replicas to 0. Even before doing that, let's see what is the current status. Let's check the current status before doing that. Okay. So get deployment. It's one replica. Now let's scale the deployment replica to 0. Verify it again. It has turned to 0. Good. Now we have to repeat the exact same process for the team. I think it's Team Purple. Let's make sure once again. Yeah, it's Team Purple, and it's rating dash service deployment. Rating dash service deployment. So we see it's one replica which is already running. So we are going to scale the deployment, and we're going to set the replicas to 0 and verify it once again. It's done. So this is now taken care. I believe we have answered all the parts of this question. So that's all for this question. Thank you for your time.